Care to chat? Hello and welcome to the Northern Ireland Social Care Council's popular podcast, Care to Chat. I'm Wendy Austin and it's my great pleasure to host these podcasts. Real privilege to hear the stories of social care practitioners and social workers and their clients, and to hear too about the many different and important aspects of the work itself. There's a huge range of situations in which they come into play, from domiciliary care to complex areas like criminal justice, from early years to end of life. Well, depending on your job, we hear a lot about self-care. It's not just about exercising, eating healthily, getting enough sleep. I mean, do any of us manage all of those? Of course, maintaining physical, mental and emotional health is vital for everyone, but it's particularly important for those working in caring professions. And developing mindfulness, accessing support and self-care practice is essential for preventing professional burnout for social workers. Does there need to be a cultural change in the social work profession? Many in practice are used to getting into hero mode to help other people, but are they looking after themselves? Well, Dr. Maddock is lecturer in the Department of Health Psychology, the Royal College of Surgeons in Ireland. Jeananne Jackson, who's senior social worker in Child and Adolescent Mental Health Service with the Southern Health and Social Care Trust. Carolyn Ewart, who's National Director of the British Association of Social Workers in Northern Ireland, and Janine Gordon, who's a Divisional Social Worker with Belfast Health and Social Care Trust. So, why is everybody here? Well, let's find out. Carolyn, why are you passionate about this topic? Why is it important to the Association of Social Workers?
Oh, I think the topic of self-care, Wendy, it's so important, and it's something that as a practitioner and someone who's left practice now and working for the Professional Association, that I really wish I could encourage every social worker out there to take time to talk about issues that they have, problems they might have, and to try and tackle some of the burnout that we hear about a lot from social workers, try and tackle that before it becomes a problem. So I'm really passionate and was delighted whenever we were able to develop this service to help and to support social workers. We started it back during COVID, which I think probably had a huge impact on us all as a profession, and then it morphed into the service that we have now, which is the professional support service. But it really is, it's a wonderful service that we offer. Brilliant to have people here today who can give testimony to that, but genuinely to be able to encourage people to just reach out, to stop and to take time to reflect on how they're coping as individuals is fundamentally important, I think.
Well, we'll hear more and be asking you more about the availability of that professional support service and so on. But Alan, you, I think, are the only person among us, well, apart from me, who's not a social worker today. So why are you passionate about this and why is it important to you? Tell us about what you've been doing around it.
Actually, Wendy, I am a professionally qualified social worker. I just happen to be a lecturer in psychology.
Excellent.
So, yeah, I would have
practiced
for a number of years, supporting people experiencing homelessness in the mental health context and young people in a primary care mental health context. So I worked for a number of years before becoming an academic, and actually one thing I became aware of my own experience was that how challenging and stressful the job was. I absolutely loved being a social worker, incredibly rewarding, offered me so much from a personal level and professional level, but I was very aware of the kind of high levels of stress and kind of how it can blur into kind of like, your experience and how you can relate to service users if you don't manage it. So personally, I feel my own interest in mindfulness, I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about, came from an experience I had where I learned to meditate. I brought it back into my own personal practice, and I was really fascinated about the benefits I was deriving from within my social work role, but also the beneficial effects it was having on my capacity to relate to the service users I was working with and support them in a better way than I was before. So I kind of became very clear on a personal level, that by looking after myself, I was able to actually be more effective practitioner too. So in that kind of relationship that I had with service users. So I felt this improves quality of care as well as keeping me within the profession for a number of years. And
now that you've moved into academia, you have conducted this study. Now we're going to hear from Jeananne as well, because you were involved in this study too. But tell us what it was and what you set out to look at.
So actually, much like Carolyn, my PhD is really on how does mindfulness work, because I was really interested in understanding the beneficial effects having me at a personal level, but also how it could transfer into mental health outcomes, both for myself, but also for service users I work with. So I developed an understanding of how mindfulness worked. So as part of COVID, I used to work in Queen's University Belfast as a lecturer in social work, and I had a group of persons UTs that was quite anxious about them going into placement at the start of COVID. So I didn't feel I was doing enough, or we were doing enough to support them going into that particularly stressful environment. So I always had plans to develop a program for social work. So I received some funding from Queen's that allowed me to develop the program, which we're going to talk about. And the success of the rollout with students allowed us to then go and get additional funding to start to use it with social workers. So the idea behind the program, it's a 6-week program. It's tailored to meet the needs of social workers. It's online. It's 6 weeks. And what we did was we did a randomized control trial. So we looked at how does this program work versus another program, looking at how does it reduce stress, feelings of burnout, feelings of symptoms of depression, anxiety, which are associated with stress and burnout, and how it might improve social practice outcomes. And we were we're actually quite surprised about how effective it was. It reduced stress, burnout, and we've had a number of really positive testimonials from participants in the program about how it's really helped them to not only kind of stay within the profession. Some participants have said they were going to leave, but actually it's really developed their self-awareness, their sense of selves, which has really been able to apply more to a therapeutic perspective with service users. So that any development of the internal understanding of themselves, they're able to then apply that in a kind of healthy way, within a boundaried way, to support the service users they're working with. So the evidence base for the program is getting stronger and stronger, more robust. So it's thankfully through the massive support from the Office of Social Services that we've been able to continue to support social workers in Northern Ireland, but been able to deliver over the last couple of years, and thankfully is going to be delivering it this year again and next year also.
So, Jeananne, you were involved in this. Now, I hope you don't mind me asking, but were you feeling stress and anxiety and worried about burnout, maybe particularly during COVID and afterwards? And why did you want to be involved in this?
Yes, taking care of myself, I think, as a social worker has become important more as I have become experienced, realising there is potential for burnout and exhaustion. And when I'd read there was an opportunity to join a group involving practising, learning about mindfulness, I jumped at the chance, felt very privileged. And the focus was on the self-awareness and taking care of ourselves and how that helps us improve our practice as well. In this group, this mindfulness group or training, I felt I was able to develop a way of being in the moment, a way of breathing, a way of developing thinking rather than jumping from one thing to another, being in the moment and develop my thinking in a positive way. All promoted my wellness, and I feel it continues to do that for me, and I continue to practice that.
Well, that must be pretty good for you to hear, Alan, is it?
Yeah, it's wonderful. Jeananne's experience, which conveyed really articulately during the program itself, was really kind of testament to the type of work she had engaged with. She really engaged with practice on a weekly basis, and you could see those benefits be developed over time. So it is wonderful to hear that you're keeping practicing, Janine. That's really great there.
Yeah, and I just want to add that practice happens on the good. It's easier to practice mindfulness on good days, but it's really important to be doing that, because when the more vulnerable days come or frustrations arise, it's harder to keep it going, but you can feel the value for that as well.
Why is taking care of yourself important for social workers, and why is well-being particularly important?
We are in a caring service. It's a caring profession, and we're meeting families and young people, in my case, that are going through crisis. So in turn, we are vulnerable because it impacts on us, and there's a high level of family. There's individual families, but we have a very big caseload as well. So if we're taking care of ourselves, we are self-aware. If we have self-compassion for ourselves, that generalises to the families that we work with. In our assessments, if we are aware, we can undertake assessments that are more informed of the young person's needs as well. I'm just And coping with stress, the ability to cope with stress rather than getting bogged down with that is really, really important.
Janine, just to bring you in, I mean, it doesn't matter what area of social work you're working in, there tends to be a big caseload, doesn't there? It is stressful. You're a divisional social worker with the Belfast Trust. Is wellbeing important to you, taking care of yourself? Have you tried the mindfulness or any of the other techniques?
I have taken part in the coaching that is offered from BASW. I found that very similar to what Jeananne is saying, just about those outcomes, and it is about investing time in yourself. And one of the lines of advertisement sort of for the professional coaching sessions would be, it's about supporting you as we support others. And I think that's so important, because if we do not look after ourselves and we aren't investing in ourselves, we aren't in the best place to be helping others.
And how did you find that went for you?
It came along at a time whenever I was changing jobs, so it actually came along at a very good period of transition for me. It offered me time that I might not otherwise have taken, because I think at times when we get into our busy 9 to 5, if we're lucky for it to be 9 to 5, but if we can get into our jobs, it's very hard to take that dedicated time out to reflect. And that's a really, really important time. That's about how we look after ourselves. It's about really, I suppose, tapping in and tuning into our feelings, how we're managing on a day, and how what is the important things, what things are going well, what other things do we need to maybe take a bit of time out to reflect on. Is there things we could be doing better? So it really gave me the opportunity at that period of transition and following that in the following months to be able to see, is there something within my work that I need to reframe, essentially? I do know it's an area I'm very passionate about. I do advertise through our service areas frequently about the importance of coaching. Quite frequently you can get back that we don't have time, there's not enough time in a day. And I often would reflect on a particular busy day I had. I had a coaching session booked in. I thought, I really haven't the time to do it. Felt like cancelling, but thought it was a bit too late notice. Went ahead. And that really did stick out in my mind. For that particular day, for that hour, was the most productive time that I spent within that day. I come out with a clear plan on what I needed to do. A clear plan helped me sort of come out of it a bit more solution focused. Instead of embedding myself in what the problems were, it was about almost coming out and drawing a line and going, where can I go from here? Where is the best place I can move from here? So it's really just about publicising. For me, I find the benefits not only in my work life, but having to reframe, setting boundaries even within personal life, and I've had a better work-life balance as well from taking up with the coaching. And for me, it's just about trying to get others to be involved in it, because I think the more support we can invest in ourselves, the stronger we're going to be as a workforce, as social workers. I would also say, going back to, I relate it quite to student social workers. As we're students, we're always taking that time out to reflect on our practice. We're doing our reflective pieces. As we become our AYE with a level of that. But as we go through our years, we don't take that time. It's almost from firefighting from one crisis to the next. So with the coaching, it does give you that dedicated 1 hour on a regular basis to be able to take that time and I suppose strategically plan forward.
I'd like to add, if I could, Wendy. I mean, I think it's so important for practitioners like Janine and Jeananne to speak and talk about their experience, because I think within social work, you mentioned it in your introduction, you said we take on the hero mode, and we do. We kind of think of ourselves as, no, I'm a helper. That's my identity. It's what I do. I'm a caring professional. And you don't really accept that you need sometimes just to take a bit of time to stop and reflect. And as you say, Janine, we're all used to reflecting. We're taught as students to be reflective practitioners. But actually, you're right, as we move through, we lose that ability to stop and focus ourselves. And we know why. I mean, the demands of social work are tremendous. We know caseloads are really high. We know staff are struggling, with vacant posts, with people who aren't in teams, and with the complexity of cases. So we know the demands are huge and are many, but actually to hear you as confident practitioners say, "No, I really benefited," and to hear you describing the benefit you each got, it really is, it's wonderful.
Yeah, and I'd just like to add to that, even just thinking about our vulnerabilities, when with each family that we work with, there are very positive moments, but there are other moments where that we are with families that have difficult experiences and crisis. And afterwards, that does impact on us. And mindfulness highlighted to me, you need to take on board, welcome the experiences, the negative experiences and negative emotions, the negative sensations. Be curious about them and take care of them, and that's something that has been a really healthy impact on me as well.
Just adding on to what Carolyn and Janine are saying, I think it's really important that social workers are aware, are allowed to feel that the profession is a stressful environment to work in. I think that's one of the things that we learned from the mindfulness program itself. Wasn't a direct focus, but actually having social workers in an online setting discussing and talking about the challenges that they faced allowed them to, rather than internalize the stress and kind of blame themselves for the stress, they're able to sort of see, what this stress is a normal response to the challenges that are inherent in the social work profession. I think that as Carolyn's saying about Janine and Jeananne talking about their experience today, hopefully that will be a message that goes out to anyone who's listening to the podcast, that if you're feeling stressed and you're feeling feelings of burnout, they're natural responses to the environment you're in. And it's really important that if you are feeling that way, that you access the supports that are becoming more available within Northern Irish social work, which is wonderful to see and not that common to utilise in order to externalise rather than internalise those feelings. Because that's through the internalisation of stress, that's where the negative thoughts come in. That's where the defensive practice comes in. That's where the barrier between yourself and the service user comes in. And actually by understanding and connecting with ourselves and that, it helps us to kind of realize it's not our fault. We're just in a very challenging environment. And if we can change that environment, externalise that, the stress starts to become easier to cope with, I suppose, in that perspective.
Yeah. And what would you say are the barriers? What's stopping social workers from maybe taking more care of themselves or using some of these techniques?
Yeah, I suppose I can say this from my experience and journey. When we talked about the superhero, you come in, you feel you need to be the superhero, and being vulnerable is something that you don't want to express. So that's one area. There is a high demand within the services, within the professional. So time is another barrier, and depend if supervision is there. In some cases, it's maybe there's such a demand in services that maybe it's not appreciated the way it should be. I feel, in my case, in CAMS, we do have the opportunity, and supervision is valued. And if in turn, then the opportunity I was encouraged to attend the mindfulness group. So it's I suppose the environment or the attitude of managers as well can help. So if it's coming from the top down, you've got to take care of yourself, then it's going to influence the team as well. So I suppose I'm thinking more in a positive way, and that's what I've experienced as time has went on. The team I've been in and experienced teaches you as well what you should be reaching for.
Is there a reluctance, Janine, when you were saying that you're a great advocate for the coaching that you have availed of? Is there a reluctance to take up opportunities like that? Because let's face it, in other jobs, if somebody offered you free coaching, you'd bite their arm off.
Yeah. I think it is, just come back to what Jeananne is saying, a lot of it is time. And I think there can be there may be an occasion where you feel a level of guilt of, I'm taking an hour out to do this coaching session, whenever maybe it's of your home life, because it is available in the evenings as well. Or if you're taking it out of an hour of your working day and you're thinking of all your colleagues continuing to work. So there probably is that level of reluctance and maybe guilt for that. I also do think there's a level of potential perception of why I would need mindfulness, why I would need coaching. And I think there could be a train of thought there in relation to that's related to there being an issue. I need coaching because there's an area of poor performance. And it's not about that. So I suppose it's about trying to change the perception of why we need that mindfulness, why we need coaching. And it is a positive thing to do. It's, as we know, I mean, there's so much research out there to show that those that have coaching, you know, have the great benefits from that. We've got, whether it's in the health service or any businesses, those real high-end entrepreneurs take great value in investment in coaching. So it's not just something to do when there's potentially maybe a failure happening or a level of poor performance. So that's, again, one of the reasons why I would champion it alongside also the other training that is available in the other workshops. It just does come back to that investment and that time to yourself. And I would say I find it quite an empowering experience. And going back to what we're talking about as students, and we empower our service users and empower our carers, I find the coach a very empowering experience. It's not that the coach is sitting there with all the solutions to any areas of concern or any problems that I may be bringing. Sometimes it's just, again, taking that step back, taking that time to reflect. You can clearly see where you need to go, or perhaps where you've maybe been going wrong. It's not that the coach is bringing the solution to yourself. So I find that sometimes it can be the smallest thing that you just didn't see in front of you because you didn't take that time out to reflect. So
yeah, interesting. Yeah. I mean, Alan was nodding furiously when you were talking there about the perception of it, you know, and that maybe people might say, oh, well, you know, she needs that coaching, let's face it. Or, you know, there's always been something a bit wrong, no wonder they need mindfulness. I mean, how do you deal with that, Alan?
It's a very good question. I think there is the cultural aspects play out. I think in social work, I think there is that kind of potential. Like I think social workers generally come into the profession and see it maybe more as a vocation initially than a profession. So I think that kind of framing of it can actually probably draw you a bit closer to the work, which is a healthy thing in some regards, in that like you're really passionate about the work that you do. But in that particular context, it can be more stressful and draining. But from the perspective of how does it work in relation to the culture, I think that social workers come into and have very reasonable, because it's a registered profession, reasonable concerns about the fact that their actions have to be perceived a certain way. So making a mistake, for example, which is inevitable in any profession, can be seen as being something that could be like career threatening potentially in that particular context. So the prevailing, even though it's not actually true, the prevailing attitude might be that if I'm being perceived to be engaging with these additional supports, then again, as Janine is kind of highlighting, you're maybe seeing there might be a stigma around that, which is kind of slightly absurd, because on the other hand, we're actually trying to support service users to engage with supports. So there's an inherent contradiction there in that how we situate ourselves and how we support ourselves is an exact conflict of how actually good social work practice is and how we try to deliver it. So again, kind of some of the conversation I've been having in relation to mindfulness, and we ran into certain barriers because there's a preconceived idea in relation to what mindfulness is, like a spiritual practice, for example. Personally, I'm not religious. I might want to edit that out after, but I'm an agnostic person. I see this as a technique to kind of improve your capacity to focus in the present, and it has all these fantastic additional kind of emotional and physical benefits that, but particularly to help you to practice effectively with social workers and practice with service users in that particular context. But there is a kind of a cultural idea that has to slowly change, and the way that we've been able to do it is by evidence, because social work is an evidence-based profession. I was very aware as I started this journey is that to get mindfulness a seat at the table, you'd have to prove it out to be an effective intervention. And now that it has pretty much been proven to be effective intervention, and we have a lot of focus group qualitative data, which social work are more interested in rather than quantitative data, I have both, it's starting to change that culture. People are starting to look at it and go, okay, this is something that can help and it's been proven to help, and I'll kind of dip my toe in it. And what we're finding is now quite nicely where the culture is starting to shift a little bit is that people who've done the program are telling other people who've done the program. So we ran a program in January and we had 5 people from the same team in the program itself, and that was wonderful because they were actually practicing in the context of their work environment too. So it's going to be a slow cultural shift, but I think conversations like this are super important, and because we do need to kind of connect and talk to other social workers and recognize that, as I said earlier, this is a stressful profession. It's okay to be challenged with it at certain times. You're going to have highs, you're going to have lows, but when you have those, you're going to, ideally, particularly the lows, you're going to have to, when if it gets too much, connect in with somebody, with your supervisor, again, the coaching, the mindfulness, whichever is your preference. Again, the good thing about the coaching and the mindfulness is that you may have a particular preference about which one you want to use, but it's great that both are available. It may not be mindfulness, may not be for you, but coaching might be. Talking a bit more might not be for you. So again, just having these available there is important. But again, it's going to take time. But I can see, because I've practiced in the south of Ireland, and I've been academic in the north of Ireland, and I can see that Northern Ireland is moving very much in the right direction in around support and wellbeing and social workers. That Irish jurisdictions are now actually quite far behind. So that's particularly encouraging, and that's because of the work and these conversations starting to take hold, I think, a little bit more.
Well, that's good to hear, isn't it? I mean, Carolyn, tell us a bit more about coaching. I mean, Janine has talked very passionately about it, and you're a very good saleswoman for it, I've got to say. But what is the service? I mean, how did it come about, and why do you think it's? I mean, it has to be important if you're funding it. Let's put it like that.
We started the service really back during the days of COVID, back when we were all locked in our houses. No one was able to go out and see anyone, and we suddenly went, we need a way to connect in with our members. We need to be able to provide some immediate support to people who were dealing with just the unreality of the situation we were all dealing with. So we ran that. We had a number of volunteer coaches, or actually we were mentoring at that stage, and we moved to a coaching service, and it's morphed into this nationwide or UK-wide service that we're able to offer up to 6 sessions with a qualified coach. And we have a member of staff who works in BASW who is an accredited coach. She provides training, supervision to our coaches, and provides a regular programme of CPD, which is really important for those of us in social work, that we know people are having opportunities to develop. And then we advertise and we put it out so you can access the service. You just need to go to the website, click on it. It's a really quite simple service. You can select from a whole host of volunteers. We have volunteers in Northern Ireland. We find that some people are really keen to connect with a local person. Some people really don't want to connect with someone local, and there's a bit of a sense of, well, because everyone in social work knows everyone essentially, or knows someone who knows you. And so we have that. We're wonderful. We have that option that you can connect with a coach who's from Scotland, Wales, England, or Northern Ireland. And then the sessions are offered that way. I mean, it's been a wonderful source of information for us in terms of the reasons that people access the service. And we did an evaluation with Dr. Jim Campbell through Queen's University Belfast and a few of the staff there in the first year that we ran the service. And that was just a Northern Ireland-based study. We're now, as Alan was talking about, having evidence-informed, because we're an evidence-informed profession, and there is an evaluation taking place across the whole service with Durham University. So the reasons that people essentially access our services, burnout, or seeking advice, importantly, before that gets to that stage. Confidence building and self-awareness, which I thought was an interesting one, but that was actually the second reason that people came through, the most requested service. Career planning, so people who are at that transition point, Janine, that you were describing. Leadership, senior management, and interestingly, disability and neurodivergence and the impact on work. So you can see there's quite a range of reasons that people are accessing the service. And I have to say a shout out to all of the coaches that we have. I mean, the approval rating is a 5-star. 91% of people who use the service rate it as a 5-star service, which is genuinely wonderful. The coaches are volunteers. They're all social workers. They understand the work environment within which you work, and they understand, I think, some of the issues. So it's been a really good opportunity. But I suppose, circle back on myself, I think that we do have a need for that cultural change. And I think, Janine, as you mentioned, there is a need for us as social workers to recognise that we do need to talk, and we need to open ourselves up to being prepared to talk, it not being seen as a problem, not being seen as a sign of weakness, which I think we've kind of skirted around, that notion that, as you say, Wendy, there's a bit of a problem there.
Just to add to what Carolyn was saying, you were talking about CPD, and I think that was another benefit that I found from the coaching.
And that's
The continuous professional development, sorry. Yes, we were talking about, I would bring an area that I wanted to discuss to my session, and the coach would have linked me to other articles, other podcasts, and I found that increased my knowledge in relation to what was maybe new articles, new research that I may not otherwise have found. So I thought that was something I found of great benefit as well. So it wasn't just about maybe having that discussion in the day. I was almost sent home with some homework to do. And again, I felt it kept my knowledge fresh. It helped to upskill me further. And I suppose then relating that into practice. So again, just another one of the wonderful benefits that you can have.
Jeananne, after your involvement with Alan's project and so on, where do you think you are now? And I mean, are you looking to do more of that? Might you be interested in the coaching? Are there other areas of personal development, professional development rather, that you would be interested in accessing?
The group itself and what I learned there, I'm taking it forward. I can't say every day because there's always blips, but what I loved, what Alan reminded us was, in mindfulness, if there's a week goes past, that doesn't mean that that's finished, you can't do it. You get right back in there. And I have found it's not going to go away. It's in my life, daily life. In the morning when I'm waking up, I want to start my day, and most days I do this with mindfulness. And when my husband's there, he's saying, if I'm not getting there, he's saying, I want to do mindfulness this morning. It's influenced my colleagues as well. There's a curiosity. So in answering your question, what next? I will continue on this in my profession. Mindfulness is something that I really want to develop in taking care of myself and influencing others. If there's a further opportunity in just revisiting, I think it would be great regarding mindfulness, just to keep that practice going and refreshed. I would never say no to coaching, but mindfulness is something that I feel I want to continue to develop. It's very significant.
We've talked a lot about it. Alan, what exactly is it? I mean, is it the same for everybody, or?
It's. I think I took about 40 pages in my PhD to try and explain mindfulness.
Yeah, I noticed that, which is why I thought I'd just ask you the question.
Just go back to Janine's final point, and then I'll answer the question, Wendy. Actually, one of the things we learned from the focus groups is that there wasn't enough follow-up afterwards for people to continue practicing. So we've had discussions with the Office of Social Services, and there's going to be monthly booster sessions now for all participants.
She's delighted.
And everybody, so everybody who has done the program over the last few years will get an email, hopefully in the next few weeks, to do a monthly booster session. And then any participants who do future programs will also follow up. So we'll be doing monthly follow-ups to everybody so that they keep the practices and the beneficial effects developing over time. We followed up with participants 12 months after I finished the group and did a focus group with them, and they said that was one thing that kind of would have really helped more, and Janine is saying that again today. So for anyone out there who is listening to this, you expect an email from me in the next while to offer you more opportunities.
Let me just let Jeananne come back there for a second.
I am going to say, Wendy, you're right. I am delighted. I felt very privileged at the time, and I did say that to Alan, to be part of a group where we could share our vulnerability and feel nurtured and taken care of and bring it on into practice. Thank you.
Oh, well, that's good news for you today.
It certainly is good news.
So, Alan, you were going to tell us.
Yeah, so mindfulness itself, I suppose the way I'd frame the program is that it's partially mindfulness practice, so it's breathing exercises, but really it's psychoeducation as well. So it's about understanding what happens to us when stress occurs, what happens to our thinking, what happens to us oftentimes on an emotional level, and how we can feel physically. So mindfulness itself is, I sort of see it breaks up into different skills that develop when you practice, but they can actually be enhanced by just learning a bit more about the process and talking and reflecting on it in the context of the social work environment you're in. So the key skills that we develop over time are our ability to identify our thoughts, recognize them, be aware of them, recognize challenging thoughts, let them arise, let them pass, because they're transitory phenomenon. From there, we develop an understanding about like ways of being that we might operate that maybe could perpetuate or make stress bigger. So the idea of like, if you stick your head in the sand, that's not going to solve your problem. So the idea is about kind of trying to approach the problem you're dealing with recognize the difficult thoughts that come with that, allow them to rise and pass, and then connect with your emotional experience that a little bit more and let them to come up. So mindfulness gives you the ability to objectively observe these things, our thoughts and our emotions. And from there, we kind of work on supporting social workers to be more accepting of themselves and more compassionate for themselves. So that idea is talking a little bit earlier on, that we have a tendency to internalize stress and blame ourselves from it. It's about actually connecting in, reflecting more deeply within ourselves, in and on our practice, and recognize this situation occurred not because of me, but because of the environment I was in, or this, and that helps us to kind of adjust and stay in the moment, essentially, with service users. So what we found is that social workers that have done the focus group, we have said it improves their ability to tune into themselves, tune into service users' needs, assess better, be more compassionate, more empathic towards service users, because they can understand themselves better, so they can actually see more in the lived experience of the service user's environment and how to play out in that particular context. So in essence, it's really about mindfulness is staying present, which is really beneficial, but you also develop these other really beneficial skills to help you to develop a deeper sense of self-awareness, which allows you to stay present when you're stressed. So you have more awareness, so you're staying more present focused because you're more awareness of your body, how you're feeling emotionally, and in your thought processes. And that helps you to be kind of more grounded with service users. So that's how the mindfulness applies in the context of everyday life. And when we know by staying into that space, you don't feel the stress because you don't get hijacked into negative thinking processes like worrying about something or ruminating about something negative. You tend to be more aware of those thoughts, they go, and then just stay grounded. And you're more able to kind of deal with the day-to-day milieu of stress that will happen in your day-to-day life as a social worker.
So I suppose at the end of the day, if social workers are healthy and supported and have the right kind of mental attitude, if you like, then it benefits their practice and better supports the communities in which you're all working. Just as a kind of final point, I mean, what would you like us all to take away from listening to this podcast, whether you're a social worker or somebody who maybe is a service user or someone who's just thinking maybe that they might like to do something like this when they grow up, who knows? What would you like them to take away, Janine?
For me, it's just the importance of taking time out, taking time for you. Again, going back to us as social workers, where that need and that will to help others. But for us to be the best version of ourselves, we need to invest. And to do that, we need to take time, we need to care for ourselves. And part of that is pausing, seeing where we're at, where we need to go and how to get there. And we'll only do that by taking time out of the busy schedules that we have.
Jeananne?
I think it just goes on a little bit from what you said, Janine, that being in the moment, being present, tuning into ourselves, even the negative experiences as much as the positive experience, because if we take care of the negative, we're less filled up and then we're more ready to have a better quality of life and enjoy it.
Carolyn, what about you?
I think I'd say, Wendy, be proud of being a social worker because it's a wonderful job, but be proud of being a social worker who takes care of themselves. And that's, I think, really for me, the takeaway.
Alan, what about you?
Yeah, I suppose what I would say is, yes, social work is a very rewarding profession, but it's a challenging profession. Being challenged by it is very normal and natural. I think that it's important for people who maybe have some ambivalence around dealing with stress at the individual level through programs like this, is that I don't think anyone who's bringing these individual interventions is suggesting at all that there's going to change systemic issues that need to change also. So social workers need to have less cases, they need to have more resources to effectively practice. But these particular interventions are very, very helpful to help us to be able to manage and sustain the individual level and work productively in service users and retain our own sense of self and our own well-being. And again, that feeling of being proud of being a social worker, which I know I still am, even though I'm a lecturer in psychology at the moment.
And Carolyn, you mentioned that the coaching service obviously is available through the British Association of Social Workers, and that's where you get information about that if you want to apply, and you explained how simple that is. Yeah. Where can people access information about what you've been doing, Alan, and what may be coming up in future?
Sure. Well, as regards to evidence-based research, if you go to Google Scholar and you put my name in, you'll find loads of papers, as Wendy has already been sent. But they're usually open access, so you can click in, you can read them. They're very available. You don't have to have access to a college. And from the perspective of the groups that are going to be taking place September and in January, which I believe should be available on the BASW website at that time. So if you go to BASW, it's available to all social workers. You don't have to be a BASW registered social or be a member of BASW. And that information there will be basically how you contact us so that you can get involved in the programme. That's going to take place then in September or January.
Well, look, thanks all of you very much indeed for joining us today to talk about this. Taking care of yourself to take care of others, enormously important. Alan, Jeananne, Carolyn and Janine, thanks again. This is a Care to Chat podcast for the Northern Ireland Social Care Council. If you want to find more information either about coaching or indeed about mindfulness, as Alan said, it's basw.co.uk. That's the BASW, British Association of Social Workers, and there'll be information on there about everything we've been talking about today. Have a look as well at the Northern Ireland Social Care Council website. That's where you'll find all of the Care to Chat podcasts and lots of information on everything to do with social work and social care here in Northern Ireland. Make sure that you subscribe to the podcast, and it is free. It's not going to cost you anything. And you can rate us, and then make sure you tell all your friends and colleagues to listen as well. Thanks for listening today.